Welcome to Salesology, conversations with sales leaders, the art of faster, easier, more profitable sales. When you're ready to transform your sales for today's transforming market, we've got you covered with your host, the queen of cold calling and founder of Salesology, award-winning author, speaker, sales trainer, and coach, Wendy Weiss.
Hi, welcome to Salesology, conversations with sales leaders, the art of faster, easier, more profitable sales. And I am your host, Wendy Weiss. I am the founder of Salesology and the Salesology Prospecting Method. And I am also known as the Queen of Cold Calling. Today, our very special guest is Andrew Bryant. He is the founder of Self-Leadership International. He is the author of 4 books. He's a certified speaking professional and an award-winning leadership coach. Andrew Bryant's work on self-leadership has been cited in over 130 research papers and Ph.D. dissertations. His latest work is the new Leadership Playbook, Being Human While Delivering Accelerated Results, and that is changing the conversation about leadership. Andrew's worked with C-level executives from disruptive Silicon Valley startups to complex multinationals like Microsoft, Red Hat, Deloitte, Pfizer, and Visa. Andrew is English by birth. He is Australian by passport. He is Brazilian by wife. He's now living in Portugal after having spent 17 years in Asia. So he is truly a global keynote speaker and thought leader. So welcome, Andrew.
Hi, Wendy. I'm just tired listening to my own introduction, right?
Yeah, it's exhausting, all that traveling and everything. So
I know.
But I want to hear the backstory. How did you become a leader in self-leadership? What was your journey?
I don't know how far to go back. I think it all starts at about 10. That's a good place to start. I started working in my father's hardware store. And if you know what a hardware store is, it's where you buy, power drills and stuff for the garden. And I grew up in England, which, of course, fixing up the house is a national pastime in the UK. I think it's very similar there in the United States. A lot of people love fixing things up. And so I started serving customers at about 11 years old. I would bounce up to people in my blue jacket and say, "Can I help you, sir?" And some customers, knowing I was the owner's son, were very happy to be served by me. And others were a little put off by a young person jumping up and offering to help them. And so I quickly learned that I had to believe in myself and project confidence if I was going to have an impact. And I got quite good at reading people at a very early age. Then, I wasn't going to follow my father into his hardware store. I wanted to do medicine. I was a pretty good student at an English grammar school. And then they decided to merge my boys' grammar school with the girls' high school. And I'll leave it to your listeners' imagination to wonder how I lost focus at that point. And instead of getting into medicine, I got into physiotherapy, which you would call physical therapy in the States, which I loved. It's a very practical science. It's all mechanics and levers and sports as well, because a lot of physios get into sports medicine, which is what I did. But this was the early 1980s. Sports psychology hadn't been invented. Positive psychology didn't turn up until the 1990s. So myself, with those of us that were working with soccer clubs and athletes, were just curious about how we could help our athletes not just recover from injury, but how they could go on and win. And so that curiosity in human performance started in my early 20s and has been with me for my whole life. I'm 61 now, so that's how it started.
Okay. So I'm kind of curious, what is the difference between leadership and self-leadership?
So leadership is actually hard to define. There are
Yes,
as
that's
many
why I'm asking.
Well, there are as many definitions of leadership as there are people who've written on the topic. In fact, is a quote by a leadership author. Self-leadership is defined because myself and my co-author, Dr. Anna Kazan, defined it in 2012 as the practice of intentionally influencing your thinking, feeling, and objectives your thinking, feeling, and emotions towards your objective. You know, I have done that definition so many times. I cannot believe I tripped over it, but there you go. The practice of intentionally influencing your thinking, feeling, and actions toward your objectives. And whereas leadership, the defining point about leadership is it's a practice of influence of a group towards agreed or group objectives. So self-leadership is the practice of self-influence, and leadership is the practice of influencing others. Both are towards objectives. So there's a similarity and a difference. The reality, of course, is that it's impossible to lead others unless you first lead yourself.
So how do you know whether you're leading yourself or not?
That is an insightful question, because we are all in an illusion that we are in some sense of control, right? But we are framed from birth. The moment that the midwife or the doctor delivers you from your mother after carrying you for 9 months, you're lifted up, slapped on the bottom, made to cry, and then within a few moments given a name, a nationality, an ethnicity, and possibly a gender and a religion to follow. You've been framed. So a lot of the times we're not self-leading. We are just operating out of programs that we've adopted from our DNA, our early childhood experiences, and our education. We are really not as in control as we might think we are. But, and here's the big but, the moment we wake up, we get some level of self-awareness, and we get this awareness, what am I thinking about this? What am I feeling about this? What's my choice? And choice is the beginning of self-leadership, because choice leads us to options, and options leads us to opportunities. The moment we set this new intention and go, you know what, that I've always done it this way before, and I've always had the same results. What if I did something different? It's like the 1999 movie, The Matrix. It's when Neo takes the blue pill and wakes up and goes, oh, this is reality. So the thing about life is you don't just wake up once. You've just got to wake up every morning, and you've got to take ownership. What am I thinking about this? And what are my choices around how I respond to this? And what is my intentionality? What is my objective? And that's how we self-lead.
So I'm wondering, I see with my clients a lot, it's very easy as the outsider to look at what somebody else is doing and say they're doing this or they're doing that, and it impacts them negatively or it impacts them positively. But I think it's very hard to look at yourself, except perhaps in hindsight. And so if you wake up in the morning, how do you know what your choices are? Because you can't always see what your choices are.
Well, the hindsight allows us to get some level of pattern recognition. And that's what the human mind is. It's a pattern recognition machine. For 50 years, we've used the computer as the analogy for the brain, but it's a terribly bad analogy. In fact, it's a wrong analogy. The human mind is a pattern recognition system, and it's constantly looking for patterns, and it's constantly got an algorithm around what's the benefit to me and also the benefit to those around me, because we're tribal creatures. So a lot of the times we aren't self-leading. We are responding, we are reacting. But as you say, hindsight is a form of reflection. If we say, I did that and it didn't work out, next time I'm going to make a different choice. So if you're using the sporting analogy, right, it's very difficult to try a new golf stroke or a new, kick in soccer on the match. You have to practice off the field. And you have to say, okay, next time this happens, this is what I want to do. So that mental rehearsal, in fact, before we even got on the air, you thanked me for being punctual. And I said, prior planning prevents poor performance. So when we use the hindsight and say, hey, that didn't work out, or it did work out and I want to do it again, then that mental rehearsal to say, next time I want to respond differently. And hopefully next time we do respond differently, or if we don't, we go, well, why didn't I? And it is that curiosity that you just said, I'm curious. It's that curiosity that allows us to develop our self-awareness, to improve our self-learning, and improve our self-regulation.
So I'm really enjoying your sports metaphor here, because some of our listeners may know my first career I was a ballet dancer. I danced in a ballet company. And so as a dancer, we are always striving to change whatever it is we're doing. We have to do it more, better, faster, slower, whatever. It always has to improve and change. But we have a teacher that's saying, do it this way. No, do it this other way. So is this something that somebody can do on their own, or do they need a coach?
Well, if you follow Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, which is the story arc of pretty much every movie you've ever seen, Joseph Campbell, the mythologist, tracked, there is a call to action. In Star Wars, Luke is, invited to go off and avenge his parents and fight the Empire. We meet a mentor along the way. A wise person, and then we meet some colleagues that follow us on this journey. So the reality, I've been writing about self-leadership for 20 years, but if I'm having a meltdown, my wife will say, go self-leadership yourself. But it was her observing the fact that I was out of my zone that helped. I have a mastermind group. I have friends that hold me accountable to my objectives. I've been coached. I've been mentored, and those things have moved me along the journey. So initially, it is somebody that comes across your path that wakes you up to the possibility that you could be a better version of yourself. That could be a parent, that could be a spouse, it could be a friend who challenges you and says, you could be better. And not only do they challenge you to be better, but they believe that you can be better. This is known as the Pygmalion effect or the Rosenthal effect. You can have a teacher at school that says, you could be a ballet dancer, and you go, I could. And then that belief from somebody else stretches your imagination of your possibilities. So yes, we can self-monitor and self-regulate, but the typical pattern is that somebody has an awakening because somebody crossed their path that challenged them to be a better person.
So we are going to pause here for a moment for a word from our sponsor. But then when we come back, Andrew, I want to talk more specifically about how somebody in sales, whether they're a business owner or a sales professional or managing a team of salespeople, how they can take what we're talking about and use that for their own benefit, and then to transform their business or their team or the people that they're working with. So we're going to pause now for a word from our sponsor, Salesology, 81 tools to grow your sales and your business faster, more easily, and more profitably. Are you stuck because you can't find the right sales and marketing resources to help you grow your business? Or maybe you're sick of spending hours hunched over your computer, researching and looking for what you need instead of selling and generating revenue. Or maybe you're just frustrated and confused because you can't find what you need at an affordable price. Well, never fear, because Salesology, we have you covered. We've done the research. We have vetted all of the sales and marketing tools so you can save hours of work because you no longer have to hunt for what you need. Download 81 tools to grow your sales and your business faster, more easily, and more profitably. It's free. Just click on the link in the show notes. You'll be glad you did. And we are back with Andrew Bryant, who is the founder of Self Leadership International. And so I want to ask you, Andrew, because the name of this podcast is Salesology, Conversations with Sales Leaders. How does this apply to the sales game?
Well, we talked about sport before the break, and sales is like a sport, is it not? You make a move, you get a response, you react to that response. Right? So sales is one of those behaviors that gives us immediate feedback, right? If our sales pitch didn't work, we know it didn't work, and we can deconstruct that. The beauty of sales, if you're doing it on the phone, you can listen back to your recording, and you can listen back with that third-party observer and go, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? What could I do better next time? And so you can improve your intentionality to be a better salesperson. If you're a sales manager or a sales coach, then absolutely you can help people become aware of their patterns. And sales, just like sport, has an inner game and an outer game. The inner game is the mental mindset of, well, I believe I'm going to get this sale versus, oh, I suck at this. Exactly the same way as sport does. So the analogies are spot on down the line. If you're in sales, you are in a contact sport.
So I'm wondering, because you said that your earlier career was as a physiotherapist, or as we would say here, a physical therapist, and you worked with athletes. Is that inner game different for athletes versus salespeople or people that are not athletes?
The inner game is the same for everybody. We all have an inner narrative. What is your narrative about sales? Now, when I started sales, in my father's hardware store, and subsequently studied the psychology of sales, good salespeople consider that they are exploring the possibility of adding value to their purchaser, right? That's the narrative. I'm a speaker. I speak on stages around the world, and I pay it forwards as helping young speakers and coaches coming up. And often they go, oh, I don't like selling. And I go, really? You want to starve? And they go, well, no, I don't want to starve. And I go, so you don't think that what you speak about or what you coach about adds value to somebody else? Oh, absolutely. I believe it adds value to somebody else. I go, so you're going to hold back your value to somebody else? No, I'm not going to do that. I said, well, then how are you going to communicate that? Because the very act of communicating your value proposition to somebody else and inviting them to test it or purchase it is sales. And they go, oh, I never thought about it like that.
I couldn't agree more. I will often say to my clients that if you don't share your value proposition, the value that you bring, then you're doing all of those potential clients a great big disservice, because they'll never know how you could help them.
Exactly.
And then they go, oh, yeah, I never thought of it that way.
So what we've done there is the example of a reframe, is seeing the world a different way. I started before the break talking about we are programmed from birth, from name, nationality, ethnicity, etc. And some of those frames are empowering. They give us a sense of positive entitlement that we should go out in the world and try new things. And sometimes they're disempowering, that, oh, well, you're not worthy, you're not valuable. And so you need to reframe those as part of your self-leadership journey to see yourself as somebody who has options and choices and somebody who is seeking opportunities. And as you do that, you grow as a self-leader, regardless of whether that's in sales or sport or in management or leadership.
So do you find that athletes have an easier time of the self-leadership inner game than people who are not athletes?
Well, athletes are very simple, right? If you run a marathon, it's 42 kilometers. Sorry, I don't do imperial anymore. And after the marathon, you typically get a rest. In business, you make a sale and then you've got to go and make the next sale, or you do a task. Also, you're running multiple games simultaneously, right? So if you're playing a game of football, you're playing football. You're not simultaneously playing football and something else. My favorite sport is actually chess, and they've merged chess with boxing at the moment. There's now boxing chess where, it's bizarre, right? But it's like, being challenged mentally and physically. But most sport is singular. It's playing tennis or it's being a ballet dancer. All you focus on is the one thing. The challenge for us is the focus gets dispersed if we are trying to make a sale, but also trying to design a new product and coach a new staff member and handle the finances. That's the challenge of business, is there's multiple focuses. And so we have to learn to, rather than multitask, switch our focus seamlessly from one thing to another and be immersed in that.
And so I think what I'm hearing you say is that the question you always want to ask yourself is, what can I do? Like, did something work? Yes or no? And if the answer is yes, do I want to keep doing that? And if the answer is no, what can I do differently to get a different result for everything that you're doing along the path?
Yes. So that's what's called a single loop learning feedback. Or right? Did it work? Yes, no. Right? What do I do differently? But you can go around that loop and miss the point. The double loop of that is to step back one level, is when I attempted that, what was my belief system? What was my paradigm in the first place? Right? I'll give you a simple example. So I used to get my checks rejected by the bank because my signature's a bit wonky, and it would change depending on the mood I was in. And I get my checks rejected. Now, you could work on a whole system to improve check recognition, right? But the question is, why are we writing checks in the first place? All right. America is one of those countries that hangs on to writing checks, but the rest of the world has gone beyond that, went into fintech, payment transfers, blockchain, right, where my signature is irrelevant. So often we're trying to solve a problem and going, well, how's a better way to do this? Do I even need to be doing this in the first place? If I believed something else, could I go about it a different way? And that's the double loop, the double step back. Did I get a result? No, but should I have even been doing this? And then that gives you a mindset of much greater options.
Doesn't that also give you the option to rationalize not doing something in the first place?
Well, it can, but the point is, if you continue to do that, you'll continue not to get results, right? So somebody's going to cross your path and go, you can come up with a brilliant idea to not do anything, right? But inaction has consequences. Action has consequences. Inaction typically has greater consequences. Right? I always like to say you can't steer a stationary vehicle. If you're moving and making mistakes, as we know, entrepreneurs go from failure to failure without losing enthusiasm, which is a quote by Winston Churchill.
Well, Philip Glass drove a taxi for something like 20 plus years before he became a world famous composer. So I know you have a new book. Tell us about your book.
Okay. Well, so you asked me at the beginning about the distinction between self-leadership and leadership and leading others. One of my Silicon Valley clients during the pandemic, I'd coached the CEO and the executive leadership team, and they asked me, could I write a book for their managers? And we had a discussion, and I asked them what their budget was, and it wasn't enough for me to stop doing what I was doing to write a book. But we agreed that I would do it for the money that they had, as long as I hung on to the IP, which is why this book is available to everybody. And I wrote that book for how to lead people, particularly in a post-pandemic digital hybrid world. And it's called a playbook because a play in sports is a set behavior. And I discovered there are about 12 conversations that the managers within this organization and all organizations need to have and typically are not having very well. One we've discussed here is the feedback conversation, how to help somebody observe what they did, what their intention was to doing it, and moderating those results. How to have that conversation, just that one conversation, increases performance significantly. And there is 11 more in the book.
Oh, please share with us number 2. Give us another one.
Well, the outcome setting conversation is one. How to set effective objectives is very relevant to sales. So a lot of times objectives are not set well. In sales, it's reasonably black and white. Sell this number of widgets, right? Whatever you're selling. But the reality is that just drives sometimes the wrong behavior. It drives people stuffing their pipeline for a quarter. It drives people only going back to the same clients. It doesn't drive the behavior of expanding and nurturing potential pipelines for future quarters. So the why conversation, why are you doing what you're doing, precedes having the objective conversation. And Simon Sinek got very famous with his Start With Why book, but having the intentionality conversation. Why are we doing this? What's important about this? And then setting objectives where people are not just selling something for the number, but building a sales profession, building a pipeline of clients that are going to buy the next quarter and the quarter after that.
And you have a gift for all of our listeners today. So would you be good enough to share details of your gift?
Well, it's less of a gift and more of a lick of the ice cream, as we would say, right? It's the puppy dog sale. I'm going to give you a taste of the book and see if you like it. So it's the piece about leadership, and you can access that from my website. You can download the introduction, the first chapter of the book from my website. And you have the URL that you're going to put there. It's selfleadership.com, which is my website, /playbook-free-chapter. But we'll put that in the podcast notes, I'm sure.
Absolutely. So as soon as you finish listening to this podcast, go to the show notes, click on the link, and you will be able to download the free preview of the new Leadership Playbook by Andrew Bryant, our special guest today. And where can people find you, Andrew?
Well, selfleadership.com is the easiest place to go. From there, there's a contact page which has every form of contact to find me, whether it's LinkedIn or book an appointment to talk to me or whatever you want to do. So selfleadership.com, follow the links to contact, and your preferred method of finding out more about me should be there.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Andrew. We have been talking to Andrew Bryant, who is the founder of Self Leadership International, and his book is the new Leadership Playbook, and the link is in the show notes. So go to the show notes, click on the link, and you can download the free chapter. And you've been listening to the Salesology Conversations with Sales Leaders podcast. If you found value in listening to today's episode, then please think about one business owner, one sales leader, one sales professional that you think might also find value in listening to the podcast, and share the link with them. And until we meet again, visualize yourself surrounded by cash, really large bills.
You've been listening to Salesology, Conversations with Sales Leaders, the art of faster, easier, more profitable sales. Be sure to follow so that you don't miss a single episode. And while you're at it, please leave a rating and review, and be sure to share it with your friends. Tune in every week for more exciting insights and wisdom on transforming sales. And until next time, visualize yourself surrounded by cash, very large bills.